Hi everybody, this is Lynn Gibbs from Tug Hill Tomorrow Land Trust. We're live on Wednesday, July 6, 2022, and I'm just waiting to see if a few people will join me. Today we're going to talk about nesting birds. I see one. If you're here, say hi, give me a shout out so I know who's here. Good afternoon. Welcome to Virtual Birding with Tug Hill Tomorrow Land Trust. This is Lynn, and I'm going to talk about nesting birds today. Has anybody seen some nests where they are happening already? Most of our songbirds will be through fledging the first brood of birds that they've had this summer. They started a little earlier this year because it was warmer. You might have seen some courtship behavior with birds pairing up, starting to gather nesting materials, starting to harass each other, and then they were building their nests. If you had participated in our Tug Hill Bird Quest this year, which is a regional bird feeder watching event every May, you would have noticed that around the third week of May when we were observing, the numbers at the feeders went down. And mostly that is because many of the migrating birds have moved north, and a lot of the birds that are staying have started to court and started to make nests, so they don't visit the feeders quite as often. And around now you might see more of them because they're done raising one brood of young. They take a little respite and then they start to do it all over again. So we kind of see waves of birds up and down at the bird feeder. But we're going to talk about nests today because you might be seeing some nests around your yard and wondering who made them. So I thought maybe I would cover a few common ones. The one we're looking at right now is an American goldfinch nest, and you can see that it's rested on top of some vertical twigs in the branches there. It's made with a lot of grasses and plant fibers. They usually line their nests with thistledown, and they're usually found on open field edges or in bogs or even around the suburbs, around houses. So American goldfinches would make this nest, and they tend to also decorate their nests with some spider webs and some fibers and other down fibers on the outside. So American goldfinch, and take note that those nests are propped on top of the crook of the branches, okay, because we'll see a few that are different. Maybe a few of you have seen these around your house or around your yard. This is a robin's nest, those blue eggs in there. And the robin's nest is a base of mud, and then they stick grass into the mud, and then they line the nest with a layer of grasses. And robins will make their first nest, and then with each successive brood they'll make a new nest somewhere else. Last year I was watching a family of robins right outside my window, and they were pretty surreptitious when they would go back in and out of the nest. They would hang around in the yard a bit and hop around and kind of look out for other birds. I watched them beat off some blue jays one day. They were pretty secretive in getting back into the bush to incubate eggs and to feed their young. So sometimes watching the birds is just great fun. If you are observing a nest, it's great to watch from far away. Use some binoculars or a scope so you aren't disturbing them or cluing predators in on where their nest is. Of course, some babies are raised in cavities. This little owlet in a larger cavity. Owls usually use unoccupied nests or cavities that have been made by other animals. They don't usually make much of their own nests. They kind of grab what's available. They usually start earlier in the year, so it's harder for them to gather stuff for their nests. So keep an eye out for cavity nesters as well. Bald eagles come back every year, usually to the same spot, and each year they'll add a few more larger sticks to the nest. They tend to get really, really big and heavy, so they prop them mostly in the crotches of sturdy branches high up in a tree. Osprey have the same kind of looking nest, but it's much smaller. Not quite as thick usually as a habitual eagle nest. I love these nests. These nests hang on for dear life through the wintertime. You might see them hanging from high in the trees along a stream or water course or in the edge of a tree in the forest. These are made by Baltimore Orioles. They're one of the most pendulous nests we have in terms of structure. They get those little guys way in there all protected. They weave grasses together to make their nests. And you will see them in the wintertime and through other years because they do last pretty well. You can see where they weave the grasses around the edges of the sticks and the nest hangs from that. Not on top like the goldfinch. It's hanging. Another common nest is the catbird nest. A gray catbird is a migrant who comes back every spring, and they tend to build a nest similar to a robin, but they don't have any mud, and they tend to use grapevine bark and fiber for their nests. They tend to be more in bushes, on edges of fields and forests. This one I thought was really cool. This is a cedar waxwing's nest. And a cedar waxwing does have some of the grapevine, also pine needles. They tend to like to nest in evergreen trees, but they will nest elsewhere. And then they tend to line their nests on the outside with moss and lichen. So it looks really cool. Nice and soft inside for those speckled eggs. And then we have the yellow warbler. The yellow warbler, you can see it again, it built its nest on the fork of the branches. Look how tiny. It's probably only about 2 inches across. And he's got a little dragonfly in his mouth. There's some young mouths down there. A lot of warblers tend to weave their nest together with spider webs and rootlets from trees and weeds and other plant fibers. Here's a red-eyed vireo nest. And see how it can be about the same size as a goldfinch, or a yellowfinch, I mean, or yellow warbler, I mean, I'm sorry. They're about the same size. The red-eyed vireo might be a tiny bit bigger, but look at the way that it's hanging. So the yellow warbler had its nest up here on top of 2 branches, but the red-eyed vireo is suspending its nest from the twigs and weaving in, again, a little bit wider fibers. Looks like some fungus or lichen in there. I think those help the nest be camouflaged more. Can you guess what this one is? Any guesses? The habitat is a clue. This is a red-winged blackbird's nest. They tend to nest pretty low in grasses and cattails, in marshes and fens, and they build with grasses, kind of a loose nest of woven grass. But the key is the habitat. A lot of times when you're looking for nests and looking for where birds are nesting, the habitat is key. Let me zoom this up a little bit for you so you can see it. This one is a scarlet tanager's nest. It's about 3 inches in diameter. They almost always use mostly twigs and a thin lining of rootlets from the trees. Their nest is similar to a red-breasted grosbeak, except that the grosbeaks like to build them in young brushy trees, and the scarlet tanager builds theirs way high up in the tree. They're flycatchers, so their insects are higher up, and that's where they want to build their nest. Similarly, mourning doves will build a nest that's very kind of unstable, kind of just a gathering of twigs. And if you've seen them on your porch, you'll know that they don't last long in the winter. They will break apart pretty easily once nesting season's over. And finally, woodpeckers. Not only owls are cavity nesters, but woodpeckers are, and chickadees are, and nuthatches are. So you might find smaller cavities made by woodpeckers and other animals occupied by those kinds of birds. Nuthatches, I'm amazed that they gather, red-breasted nuthatches gather resin in their beaks, and they put it on the inside and the outside of their hole to deter predators. So those are some of the common nests that I wanted to show you today. Does anybody have any questions or any observations they've made this summer? Have you been able to watch any young birds growing up? There's usually about a week after they get out of the nest that they're on the ground, maybe 4 to 7 days where birds are on the ground and fairly vulnerable to ground predators, but the parents are out there looking after them. And I don't know if you've ever had a robin's nest nearby when you're trying to do something in your yard, but I did growing up, and it would always dive bomb us when we were trying to mow the lawn. So those parents are out there, they're watching. So when you're looking for nests, you can find nests in a couple of different ways. One, you can see them because they're nesting like right in front of you in a bush where is right next to a house or near a car, or somewhere where you're going in and out, like a Phoebe's nest over the light on your back deck. Sometimes you can just see them. Other times you need to figure out where they're going. Sometimes you can notice other birds, mobbing another bird, say like blue jays mobbing crows, and they're trying to get away from their nest. Sometimes you can locate a nest that way. You might see birds with, again, nesting material in their beaks, taking it into their nest. So be aware as you're out there, if you like nests, and identifying different kinds of nests that birds build, because they have certain adaptations and habitats they like. It's another fascinating aspect of birds that you can explore. So that's what I have for nests for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, I'll be putting some links in the comment section for you to explore nests further if you want more information. And I hope you're seeing great birds and having a great time outside in this beautiful weather. So I'm going to sign off now. You guys have a great summer. I'll see you next month. First Wednesday. Bye-bye.